I am back from holiday. Hello everybody, welcome to another review. I am back and it's been about a week to 2 weeks. It's been about 2 weeks since my last video, which was the Squid and Monolith review. I am going to be reviewing the new Nothing But Thieves album, Dead Club City. Now, I didn't really follow this release. I knew there was two singles that released, Welcome to the DCC and Overcome, which I heard Welcome to the DCC once, and I haven't even heard anything else. This is kind of like definitely a very blind listen, because I don't really listen to as much Nothing But Thieves. I've dabbled with at least a few albums, such as Broken Machine, which definitely is a sort of harder sound in terms, or at least compared to now, it's definitely a harder sound. And bits of Moral Panic I have gone through, which seems to be a little bit of a step away. It still keeps some of that energy, and it's definitely a bit more energetic than this album. And this album kind of goes for a more 80s synth sort of sound, and we get inspirations from bands and artists like Daft Punk, especially with tracks like Pop the Balloon and Members Only, which just kind of feel like there's sort of samples of there, especially Pop the Balloon. It's just even some, guess, Muse to an extent. There's even points where I feel like they're inspired by the Simulation Theory era of Muse, which is a interesting take, because while I do like the 80s sort of synth pop rock that this band's trying to explore, I feel like it's often not as enticing as it could be. I feel there's a lot of potential and they just don't really go anywhere with it, especially towards the second half, which in my opinion is just filled with a lot of weaker tracks. I feel like the first half at least sort of keeps you on your toes. It's transitioning from sort of a lighter sound, going away from stuff like Broken Machine to just overall a lighter tone, but I feel in that we also kind of suffer in a way with the production being a little bit off at times. It's kind of inconsistencies, points where it just doesn't feel like it needs to be there, like Pop the Balloon. I'll bring up again. In Pop the Balloon, there is a 30-second silence in the middle of the track, and I'm fine if they want to sort of disjoint that and kind of make you think, oh, maybe that's the end, and then they'll throw something else at you. But the fact that it's 30 seconds, it just doesn't really work. It just kind of feels like a really awkward bit to listen to, and you might as well just skip through it, because 30 seconds of silence just isn't very interesting. It just kind of reminds me of when you listen to bands back in the 90s where they would have a really long song because there's a lot of silence that gets you to a hidden track. But if they're trying to do something similar to that but with the same song, I feel like it doesn't work, because you just cut in the song in half and then just throw in the second half miles down the road. It's just not really it's interesting. I should probably mention as well, Pop the Balloon is just I don't know what the hell the lyrics are for this one. When I saw Incel Boy and even heard Incel Boy, I just kind of, my brain shut off, because I was trying to comprehend what some of this was, even mentioning crypto as well. This definitely just feels awkward. I guess it's trying to go for the Dead Club City, sort of like analysing on the modern world, I suppose, and there's definitely a story being told, but I just feel with the repetitiveness, just with the very weak melodies and just a lot of songs that just don't really shine, I'm just not really invested in the story, nor am I really invested as much in the sound. Again, when a band's trying to do an 80s synth pop rock sound, it can work, but if they're inspired by Simulation Theory, which in my opinion is one of Muse's worst albums, and a lot of the ideas that they had there were just lackluster, then I feel like something like that just wouldn't really be much better for something like Nothing But Thieves. I think even just kind of breezing through some of the other stuff, I can see there's a notable difference, and I kind of prefer when they really had that sound of theirs back in the first 3 albums, and this being the 4th one, it just kind of sets aside that they have a trilogy, what I consider a noticeable sound for them, and even if it changed a little bit, I'm happy, and it's nice that they're kind of going for something a lot different, but at the same time I feel like it's just jeopardized a lot of the ideas. Welcome to the Dead Club City and Overcome as singles, I think they were great songs. I definitely think they've got some of the more charm that you'd get from the earlier stuff as well. I feel like some of this could even belong on Moral Panic if it was tweaked a bit. And I still like Tomorrow's Clothes. I think this one's just quite catchy. It's quite a fun little nice banger. And there's even some Pharrell. City Haunts have some very musy parts, which for part of it it's not as interesting, but I do quite like this one. But I feel like Do You Love Me Yet, it was kind of where I started noticing this album was declining. It didn't necessarily feel as intriguing, and there was just a lot of repetitiveness, and it just wasn't sticking in my head whatsoever. And while there were some good songs along these tracks, Green Eyes Sienna is one example of me just drifting away and just not enjoying this. Foreign Language and Talking to Myself are just some of the weakest tracks on this record. I don't even see myself going back to them. They just feel very, again, like I've mentioned before, lackluster. It even reminds me of We Are Scientists, Lobes, which they sort of went for a synthy dance pop rock sound, and while it does work in some cases, I feel like it's too similar later on, and it just kind of suffers from that. And especially later on, there's just less nuance with these tracks, whereas I feel like the first half at least has some. Pop the Balloon obviously stands out, as I've talked about it a lot now, but it just mainly stands out just for weird reasons. It's one of the more energetic songs, it has a bit more energy to it, but at the same time it also stands out just for bad reasons too. And I just feel like the enjoyment I mainly get from this record is just play the first few songs and that's it. It's not necessarily a strong record. It's not a terrible album in my opinion, but just going back in through this constantly has not really been my cup of tea. I've tried to listen to it again, but I feel like the more I listen to it, it just kind of drifts away. There's honestly some issues with this, and I even think I honestly think this is a huge departure from their better sound. I just feel like Moral Panic sort of had a sound I preferred in what it was going for, and that one was sort of drifting away from the harder rock sound they had. So if they're doing at least something like that and they're trying to drift away further, I feel like for me it just feels the band wants to step aside from kind of their heavier sound, just kind of mellow with some indie synth rock, and that's fine. But I just feel like at the same time their songwriting has just diminished, and this honestly just kind of feels like a very bland album in my opinion. It's the first one where I just don't really have any interest, and I even struggle to think of points to make for this one because there's not necessarily much to talk about. It's just kind of there. Honestly, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. I have enjoyed some of the early stuff, and I kind of was expecting we might hear a bit of that, but while it does sound like a Nothing But Thieves record, it also just sounds like Nothing But Thieves trying to create next to nothing, and that's literally how I just thought about this record. But I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope to get some more reviews out soon. And since I've actually now got a temporary job coming, I might struggle to do some videos as frequent as I've been doing, so I will still try and do reviews, but they might not be as often. But thank you for watching, and see you guys in the next video.